The 16 most expensive football transfers of all time all happened in the last 16 months as a cauldron of increased TV deals, foreign investment, and wider inflation seeps into the European game. Although this recent spike represents a staggering rise by anyone's standards, transfer fees have been rising sometimes gradually and sometimes rapidly since the dawn of professionalism and player registration in the British game in the 1890s. That is the decade in which we begin this video, going right up to the current decade of the 2010s. I must apologise for the fact that since we start so early, sourcing images in the database I have access to for some of the early inclusions did prove tricky, but I've done my best. Here is the most expensive footballer of every decade from the 1890s to the 2010s. 1890s. Willie Groves. The world's first £100 footballer, Willie Groves, left West Bromwich Albion / West Midland rivals Aston Villa for that princely sum in 1893. Groves was a talented striker who had caused controversy in Scotland prior to that move, having played a pivotal role in Hibernian winning the 1887 Scottish Cup before the club faced accusations of having made illicit payments to the youngster at a time when Scottish football was still strictly amateur. His move to Aston Villa was also slightly controversial, with the Birmingham club being forced to make that £100 payment to West Brom amid allegations that he had been illegally poached from the Baggies. Groves spent just a season at the Wellington Road ground, but he did help Villa to their first league title. He left under the cloud of a contract dispute and he died in poverty in Edinburgh at the age of 39. 1900s. Alf Common. One of only 4 players, along with Diego Maradona, Ronaldo and David Jack, to have set world record transfer fees twice during their careers, Alf Common first became the world's most expensive footballer in a £520 move to Sunderland, before becoming the most expensive player of the 1900s and the first £1,000 footballer in a 1905 transfer to Middlesbrough. Adjusted for inflation, that's about £55,000 in 2019, or enough to buy you an entry-level BMW M3. Common was a fairly prolific forward who won 3 caps for England and scored in Sheffield United's 1902 FA Cup final win, but despite forming a tremendous strike partnership with England great Steve Bloomer at Borough, the club never finished higher than 6th in Common's 5 seasons at Ayresome Park. 1910s. Percy Dawson. Forwards commanding the largest transfer fees is nothing new, and our third entry is yet another goal-getter. Percy Dawson was born in the northeast of England, and he began his footballing education with North Shields. Hearts snapped him up in 1911 though, and after 70 goals in 92 games, he was one of the most sought-after talents in the British game. It was with a heavy heart that Hearts took the decision to sell the frontman in 1914 in order to fund improvements to Tynecastle Stadium. The fee they received, £2,500 from Blackburn Rovers, saw Dawson overtake Tommy Barber as the world's most expensive footballer. He spent the next 8 years contracted to Blackburn, although 4 of them would see the Football League suspended due to World War I. Dawson did help Rovers win a first league title in his debut campaign, before ending his career at Barrow. 1920s. David Jack. One of the outstanding players of his day, David Jack was a wonderfully gifted inside forward who unsurprisingly commanded an enormous transfer fee. A 2-time world record fee signing like Alf Common's, Jack first transferred for £3,500 right at the start of the 1920s, and later for almost £11,000 in 1928. Jack's first move was from Plymouth Argyle back to his hometown club of Bolton, where the England international formed a scintillating partnership with Joe Smith, scoring 114 goals in 295 games as Wanderers won 2 FA Cup titles, and Jack became the first player to score at Wembley Stadium. After 8 seasons in Lancashire, with Bolton facing financial struggles, Jack became the world's first 5-digit signing in a move to Arsenal. Herbert Chapman considered the transfer a bargain, and Jack bagged 113 goals in 181 games for the Gunners, winning 3 First Division titles and becoming the first player to win the FA Cup at Wembley with 2 different clubs. 1930s. BERNABE FERREYRA. The first non-all-British transfer or player in this 7, BERNABE FERREYRA's 1932 move from Tigre to River Plate, is the most abnormal in the history of the sport. For the first 4 decades prior to it, and the 2 decades after it, the largest fees in football were all in the British game. But in this one deal, River Plate smashed the world record transfer fee in a way it has never been smashed either before or since. Not only did Ferreira more than double the previous record fee, this record wouldn't be broken for 17 years, making it by far the longest standing record fee of all time. We're not done there though. If one adjusts for wider global inflation, which would make Ferreira's £23,000 deal worth in excess of £1.5 million in today's money, his record would have stood for 22 years. Ferreira, unsurprisingly, was a centre forward, and a very good one. Renowned for his fierce and accurate shooting ability, Ferreira cannoned the ball into the back of the net 206 times in just 197 games at club level, making the only Argentine footballer to have averaged better than a goal a game. 1940s. Johnny Morris. As I said, it took 17 years for someone to break Bernabe Ferreira's record, but thankfully, someone did just before the end of the 1940s. Johnny Morris was the player in question, joining Derby County from Manchester United in a £24,000 deal in March 1949. Morris had 3 excellent seasons in Derbyshire, but despite his break form, the Rams were marooned in mid-table, and later relegated a year after Morris departed for Leicester City. 1950s. Omar Savori. The 1950s saw the rise of a new footballing superpower in the spending league, and that came from the Italian top flight of Serie A. Between 1952 and 1973, the transfer record was broken 7 times, and every time, it was an Italian team who broke it. On only 2 of those occasions was the player themselves Italian though, and the world's most expensive signing during the 1950s was Argentinian forward Omar Savori. Whilst River Plate spending made them the envy of every club in the world in the 1930s, they'd been overtaken on that front by their European counterparts in the 1950s, and now they would lose their star forward in a world record-breaking deal. Savori joined Juventus from River for £93,000, equivalent to £2.2 million today, going on to score 167 goals for the club. That makes him Juve's 5th highest scorer of all time, and he also scored 8 goals from 9 caps to the Italian national team following the move. 1960s. Pietro Anastassi. It is at this time that we start to see transfer fees making really substantial rises. 11 years on from signing the most expensive player of the 1950s, Juventus once again signed the most expensive player of the 1960s, but whilst Omar Savori cost the club £93,000, Pietro Anastasi would come at a fee of £500,000. That was a substantial amount of money at the time and equivalent to £8.5 million today. Anastasi was a well-rounded forward who both scored and created goals, and he went on to score 78 goals in 205 games for Juve, making the club's 10th highest scorer of all time, tied with Roberto Baggio. 1970s. Paolo Rossi. You might think Paul Pogba is the first player to come through a club's academy, leave for nothing, and then return for a world record fee, but it was actually Paolo Rossi with the team who signed Paul Pogba from Manchester United, Juventus. Yes, Juve make it 3 from 3 with the most expensive signings in the 1950s, 60s and 70s. Somewhat unusually, Juve actually part-owned Rossi already in 1981 when he was starring for Vicenza. However, Lionel Rossi demanded £1.75 million from Juventus in order to gain full ownership of the Italian international. Juventus obliged, making Rossi the most expensive footballer in the world, and he spent the next 4 years playing in Turin. Rossi was never particularly prolific for Juve, or indeed outside of Vicenza, and he is best known for his performances in the 1982 World Cup. Rossi scored a hat-trick against Brazil in the quarter-finals, a brace against Poland in the semi-finals, and another goal against West Germany in the final, winning the Ballon d'Or that year as Italy won the World Cup. 1980s. Ruud Gullit. The transfer record was broken 3 times in the 1980s and twice in 2 years by Diego Maradona. But ultimately, the most expensive transfer of the decade was Ruud Gullit to AC Milan. Gullit was one of a trio of Dutch greats to join Milan in 1987 and 88, alongside Frank Rijkaard and Marco van Basten. Together, along with the help of their teammates and under the stewardship of Arrigo Sacchi, they would win 3 Serie A titles and 2 European Cups. Physically and technically superb, Gullit was such a complete footballer, and the £6 million fee AC Milan paid for him proved to be more than justified. He won the Ballon d'Or in 1987 and was runner-up in 1988. Gullit is also the first player in this video, somewhat incredibly, who made my list of the 100 greatest footballers of all time, coming in at 82nd. 1990s. Christian Vieri. An incredibly underrated footballer, Christian Vieri isn't talked about anywhere near enough when it comes to discussions regarding the great centre-forwards of the 1990s and 2000s. A monster in the air, powerful and precise in the finish, and so clever with his movement, Vieri averaged a goal a game at his best, and he would have gone down as one of Italian football's all-time greats were it not for injuries. He broke Danielson's record as the world's most expensive footballer in 1999 to become the most expensive player in the world, joining Inter Milan from Lazio for £32 million, which is equivalent to almost £55 million 2 decades on. Vieri scored 123 goals in 190 games for the club despite his numerous injuries, but could never quite get back to his best after leaving the club in 2005. 2000s, Cristiano Ronaldo. We're now getting to the stage where there are no real surprises without penultimate inclusion, and that is of course Cristiano Ronaldo. The world record transfer fee was broken 5 times between 2000 and 2013, and every time it was Real Madrid who broke it, as the Italians were finally overtaken by Florentino Perez and his era of Galacticos at the Bernabeu. Ronaldo's £80 million move from Manchester United to Real in 2009, equivalent to £105 million now, exceeded the world record £56 million Real had paid for Kaká about 5 minutes earlier. It took a bit of kicking and screaming for Ronaldo to ensure his departure from Old Trafford, but the move ended up being a dream one for both parties. Real enjoyed 9 seasons of extraordinary success, particularly in the Champions League, whilst Ronaldo ensured his place among the pantheon of all-time greats in the history of the sport. What's more, Real then sold Ronaldo in 2018, aged 33, for more than they'd paid for him at the age of 24. Not bad business then. 2010's, Neymar. The most expensive signing of this current decade, and of all time, to the eternal shock of everyone who has been living in an underground bunker with no connection to the outside world over the last few years, is Brazilian superstar Neymar. Along with Ferreira in 1932, Neymar's move to PSG is the most emphatically in which the world record fee has been broken, although one suspects this record won't stand for 17 years. Regardless of what some silly people seem to say in the comments on some of our videos, Neymar is undoubtedly one of the finest players of his generation. He has had the weight of maybe the most football-crazed nation on earth on his shoulders since about the age of 13. And still, he has managed to live up to his potential, becoming one of the most dangerous forwards on the planet and potentially soon his nation's all-time record goalscorer. Since joining PSG for £198 million in 2017, and yes, I will tell you, that is apparently around £204 million now, adjusted for inflation, Neymar has scored 51 goals in 58 games for the club. Nevertheless, he has been linked with a departure this summer, but at the time of recording this video, he is still with the Parisians. Looking back on this video spanning some 129 years and 13 world record fee breaking footballers, we can see that Italian and English clubs lead the way with 5 inclusions each, followed by Argentinian, French and Spanish clubs with 1 inclusion each. Thank you all for watching, give us a like if you enjoyed the video, obviously let us know your thoughts in the comments, and do go ahead and subscribe and turn on notifications if you are a fan of the channel and don't already.